picture this. You're at a kid's birthday party, right?
Right, just standard weekend stuff.
Exactly. And you're talking to the other parents about spring break plans. Normally, the biggest debate in that scenario is, whether to book a flight to the beach or load up the car for the mountains.
Yeah, it's usually just about beating the crowds or
Right.
like finding a resort with a decent kids club.
Right. It's a very standard, predictable set of parameters. But then you read the opening remarks from our source material today.
The March 22, 2026 edition of the Sunday Blender newsletter.
Yes, the Sunday blender. And suddenly that casual weekend conversation is entirely different. The newsletter editor points out that parents right now are they're actively planning trips to Japan for late season skiing or heading to Southeast Asia or even China.
Which is quite a pivot.
It is, and their deciding factor. They specifically want to go somewhere where they don't have to worry about missiles or drones flying over their head.
Oh, wow. I mean, that is the absolute definition of a paradigm shift. That opening anecdote is so striking because it sets a really profound baseline for our entire deep dive today. We are looking at a world that is fundamentally adapting to intense, overlapping geopolitical and technological pressures.
Mm-hmm.
The baseline for what we consider, normal daily life has moved significantly.
And that is exactly our mission today. We are going to distill what is honestly a dizzying snapshot of a world in transition. We've got a stack of sources here covering everything from the death of traditional software to extreme planetary weather to some incredibly profound stories of human resilience.
It's a lot to cover.
It is, but the goal is to help you, the listener, connect the dots of this fast-moving reality. So as we go through this, I want you to consider how your own daily life, your job, your physical environment, the media you consume, how all of that fits into these massive systemic shifts.
Because if there's one thing this newsletter makes clear, it's that none of these events are happening in a vacuum. I mean, the geopolitical tensions are driving the tech race.
Right.
And then the tech race is demanding this massive physical infrastructure. And that infrastructure is just colliding with a highly volatile natural world.
Okay, let's unpack this. Starting with what might be the biggest earthquake in the business world right now.
Nvidia.
Yes, Nvidia. At their GTC 2026 event, CEO Jensen Huang stood on stage and announced a staggeringly large number. He stated that companies are going to spend $1 trillion buying Nvidia's AI chips through 2027.
I mean, to put that in perspective, $1 trillion is roughly the entire gross domestic product of Indonesia.
Wow.
Just spent on silicon chips in a highly condensed time frame. The scale of capital allocation we are witnessing right now is breathtaking.
It's hard to even wrap your head around, honestly, but what caught my eye wasn't just the price tag, it was his declaration about the software industry itself. He stated that the era of traditional software is ending and every SaaS company will become an agent-as-a-service company.
Yeah, that is a crucial distinction that I think a lot of people are missing. For the last 20 years, we've lived in the SaaS era, software as a service.
Right, so it's like we spent the last 20 years buying increasingly fancy kitchen knives.
Kitchen knives.
Yeah, hear me out. That's traditional SaaS. We bought better tools, better spreadsheets, better word processors, project management apps just to chop our own vegetables.
Okay. I see where you're going.
Right. And suddenly, Nvidia is standing on stage saying, no, we're not selling you knives anymore. We're just going to sell you the personal chef.
That is actually a perfect way to look at it, because to explain the actual mechanism here, a traditional SaaS app waits passively for a human to input data.
Right. It only works when you drive it.
Exactly. An AI agent, on the other hand, is autonomous. An agent as a service can be given a high-level goal like balance these quarterly books. And it will go monitor your email, extract the necessary invoices, input the data into the accounting software, and email a summary to your boss, all without you clicking a single button.
Yeah.
It doesn't just assist the work, it executes the work.
But wait, if we are the ones who used to chop the vegetables, what happens to us? Like, what happens to the millions of people whose entire career is based on manipulating data on a screen?
What's fascinating here is the complete inversion of our historical expectations.
Right.
For decades, I mean, the cultural and economic consensus was that blue-collar physical labor would be automated first.
Yeah, we thought robots would take the factory jobs and the intellectual, screen-based knowledge work would be safe, exclusively human.
Right. But the newsletter highlights a viral heat map created by Andrej Karpathy that proves the exact opposite is happening.
Yes, Karpathy is a highly respected AI researcher. He scored 342 U.S. jobs based on their exposure to AI, and it covers something like 143 million workers.
And the data is stark. If you look at the heat map, The jobs that require you to physically show up and manipulate the material world, like construction laborers, roofers, janitors, barbers,
Mhm.
they scored near zero. Yeah, a 1 or a 2 out of 10 for AI exposure. But if you have a high-paying, white-collar job, if you are a software developer, a financial analyst, a copywriter, you are scoring an 8 or 9 out of 10.
So the economic value of physical presence is being fundamentally rewritten. If your job exists entirely inside a laptop, you are standing on the fault line.
Absolutely.
And it's not just basic office work, right? The newsletter notes that even autonomous driving is having its ChatGPT moment, with car makers like BYD, Nissan, and Hyundai building on Nvidia's tech to create driving agents.
Precisely. The screen work, the digital analysis, is being consumed by these agents.
So if agents are the ones taking over all this digital labor, it begs a massive question. Who is actually building the brains behind these agents?
Right.
And that leads us to a really surprising revelation in the newsletter about the global tech race, because we constantly hear about this impenetrable wall between US and Chinese tech, sanctions, bans, intense geopolitical rivalry.
Yeah, new Cold War narrative.
Exactly. But under the hood, the reality seems a lot more pragmatic.
This is where the curtain gets pulled back a bit on the AI arms race.
Hmm.
The newsletter details the story of an American AI coding editor called Cursor.
Right, which is incredibly popular and valued at something like $29 billion. They launched their flagship new model, Composer 2, claiming it was an in-house breakthrough that beat leading models like Claude Opus 4.6.
But tech developers are notoriously curious. Within hours of the launch, a developer started monitoring the actual network traffic, looking at the raw data flowing in and out of the application, and they spotted a hidden model ID embedded in the API. It was Kimi K2P5RRL.
Meaning what, exactly?
That string of text proved that this flagship American product wasn't processing the code on a proprietary US server. It was secretly routing the user's request to an open-source model called Kimi K2.5.
And who makes that?
Moonshot AI, which is based in Beijing.
Wait, really? So a $29 billion US company is quietly routing tasks through a Chinese open-source model. How does that even happen?
It comes down to cost and compute efficiency. Open-source models are becoming incredibly powerful and, honestly, practically free to use if you know how to implement them.
So they just use whatever works best.
Exactly. Developers are ruthlessly pragmatic. They optimize for whatever solves the problem fastest and cheapest, completely regardless of where the code originated.
Are the geopolitical tech wars just a facade then? I mean, politicians are talking about iron curtains, while developers are just copy-pasting the best tools across borders?
If we connect this to the bigger picture, it certainly looks like open-source AI is functioning as a universal language that completely ignores national boundaries.
Yeah.
We saw the exact same dynamic play out internally in China, too.
Oh, with Tencent.
Yes. Tencent, one of the largest tech conglomerates on Earth, built a tool called SkillHub. And to do it, they scraped 13,000 skills from an independent open-source AI agent called OpenClaw.
Which the users affectionately call raising a lobster, according to the newsletter. I love that detail.
It's very internet.
Yeah, but Tencent scraped this indie project without asking and drove the creator, Peter Steinberger's server bill up into the 5 digits.
Right. But look at the resolution here. After a massive viral backlash online, Tencent didn't deploy corporate lawyers to crush the creator.
Like you'd normally expect.
Right. Instead, they pivoted in just 5 days. They went from scraping OpenClaw to becoming an official sponsor, and they integrated it into WeChat, giving it access to over 1 billion users.
Wow.
Tencent realized they couldn't beat the open ecosystem, so they joined it. It's a complete rejection of the old corporate playbook, which was all about building walls.
Which creates such a fascinating contrast with another story in this week's newsletter. Because while tech is sprinting toward these hyper-open, borderless ecosystems, legacy institutions are fiercely holding on to their gates.
The Augusta National story?
Yes, specifically the Augusta National Golf Tournament.
It's a brilliant juxtaposition. Augusta was founded exactly 92 years ago from the date of this newsletter on March 22, 1934. It is the ultimate closed system.
Right. Membership is completely locked down. You can't apply, you can't buy your way in. You just have to be invited by the power brokers. The newsletter even mentions that a 3-time champion was recently denied a tee time just because he wasn't accompanied by a member.
In the 20th century, being a closed, exclusive system was the ultimate sign of power and stability. You control the access, you control the value.
Right, artificial scarcity.
Exactly. But in 2026, closed systems, whether they are software companies trying to build proprietary models or institutions trying to hoard access. They're really struggling to keep up with the relentless speed and efficiency of open collaborative networks.
But let's ground this for a second. All of this limitless digital intelligence, all these open source models routing requests across the globe in milliseconds, it isn't magic.
No, it's very physical.
Right. It doesn't just float in the ether. It requires massive, highly constrained physical infrastructure. You need servers, you need power grids, you need cooling systems. Which brings us to what the newsletter outlines as a brutal physical pivot.
Because software scales infinitely and cheaply, but atoms do not.
Here's where it gets really interesting. The newsletter covers Elon Musk officially launching TerraFab. This isn't just a tech project. It is a $25 billion vertically integrated chip factory.
Which is massive.
Yeah, he is attempting to produce 100 to 200 billion custom AI chips a year to power Tesla, the Optimus humanoid robots, and his AI company Grok.
To understand the audacity of that, he is effectively trying to replicate decades of Taiwan Semiconductor's manufacturing capacity, the company that essentially builds all the world's advanced chips by the year 2030.
It's like speedrunning TSMC's entire history.
Exactly. At the same time, you have China's Unitree Robotics filing for a $610 million IPO. Their revenue just surged 335%, almost entirely driven by delivering 5,500 humanoid robots into the physical world.
So they are making wildly aggressive vertical bets. They are throwing billions at concrete and steel because they know AI is completely useless without physical vessels and physical compute power. But why is it so risky?
It's what we call the capital punishment of the physical world.
Capital punishment.
Yeah, think about it. If you make a mistake in a software product, you write a patch, you push an update over the internet, and it's fixed in an hour for practically zero marginal cost.
Right.
But if you make a mistake in physical manufacturing, the punishment is catastrophic.
And we see that exact catastrophe play out in the newsletter with Honda. They just reported their first annual loss in 70 years.
A staggering $15.7 billion charge.
Yes, Honda completely scrapped 3 planned North American electric vehicles, the 0 Series SUV, the Saloon, and the Acura RSX.
And why did they scrap them?
The reasons listed were tariffs, lost tax credits, and overwhelming Chinese competition. Honda just vaporized $15 billion because the physical world doesn't have a backspace key.
The AI revolution, combined with the geopolitical tensions we started the show with, is forcing a brutal restructuring of global supply chains. It severely punishes those who hesitate or misread the market, like Honda, and it demands these massive all-in gambles from people like Musk.
But it's not just corporate supply chains feeling the strain of the physical world. While billionaires are racing to build future factories to house AI, our current physical world, the actual planet, and our legacy human infrastructure is buckling under the pressure.
The environmental data from this week provides a very sobering reality check. We are culturally obsessed with optimizing for the future, but we are completely failing to maintain the present.
The numbers from NOAA are alarming. Southern California is experiencing a historic March heat wave. We're talking temperatures 35 degrees above average.
Wow.
The city of Woodland Hills hit 100 degrees Fahrenheit, which is the earliest it has ever reached that temperature. And this follows what NOAA confirmed was the warmest winter on record, which is rapidly accelerating snowmelt and throwing off entire ecosystems.
And while California is burning up, the Pacific is being battered. Hawaii was just devastated by a Kona-low storm system.
135-mile-per-hour winds, 46 inches of rain dumping on Maui, and an estimated $1 billion in damage. But inside that natural disaster, the newsletter points out a massive, preventable human failure.
Yes, the Wahira Dam on Oahu. It's a century-old structure, and during the storm, it reached an imminent risk of failure, directly threatening the lives of 2,500 people living downstream.
And the reason it was at risk wasn't just the rain. It was because the owner of the dam, Dole Food Company, had ignored decades of warnings from the state about its inadequate spillway.
Just unbelievable negligence.
Right. Just look at the juxtaposition of where we place our energy as a society. We can track the exact API code of a hidden AI model routing through Beijing within hours of it launching, but we let a massive food corporation ignore state safety warnings about a century-old dam until 2,500 human lives are literally at risk of being washed away.
It really makes you wonder.
Are we fundamentally misallocating our attention?
This raises the crucial issue of maintenance versus innovation. Building a new AI agent or a humanoid robot is glamorous. Fixing a concrete spillway on a 100-year-old dam is not.
No, it doesn't get you a $600 million IPO.
Exactly. But the climate data shows that the natural world is becoming highly volatile, and that volatility is brutally exposing the fragility of the legacy infrastructure we rely on. We assume the ground beneath us is stable while we reach for the cloud, but the ground is literally crumbling.
Which leads us to a really compelling question. When the physical and economic systems around us start cracking, how do human beings react? Because people have to respond to these pressures.
The newsletter provides a fascinating cross-section of human behavior this week. It is essentially a study in how different systems and individuals process extreme stress.
Let's look at 3 distinct reactions from the source material. First, we have a story out of Hong Kong. 13 affluent parents and a middleman were found guilty of a bribery scheme.
They were paying up to 200,000 Hong Kong dollars to a kindergarten administrator.
Right, and just to get priority admission for their toddlers.
Yeah.
These were not desperate people struggling to survive. They were highly educated professionals who decided the rules shouldn't apply to them, so they tried to cheat a fair system. But Hong Kong's anti-corruption agency, the ICA, pursued them relentlessly and secured convictions, proving no one is above the law.
That is an example of systemic resilience. The rule of law held firm when privileged individuals attempted to bypass it. But the newsletter also highlights a story of profound individual accountability in mainland China with Zhang Jindong.
He's the founder of the retail giant Suing, right?
Yes, he built an absolute empire over 3 decades, a 39.5 billion yuan fortune.
Okay.
But he made catastrophic, highly leveraged bets on real estate and e-commerce, and the empire collapsed.
Yeah.
38 of his companies had to be restructured, leaving him with an unfathomable 2,387 billion yuan in debt.
Now, we see billionaires fail all the time. Often they hide their assets in offshore accounts or flee their jurisdictions.
Right, standard playbook.
But Zhang didn't do that. He surrendered his entire fortune. He gave up everything, keeping only a 68 square meter walk-up apartment and a basic health insurance card so he could face his creditors honorably.
It is an incredibly rare display of corporate accountability and personal integrity. He accepted the absolute reality of his failure rather than trying to warp the legal system to escape it.
And then we see a transcendent kind of collective resilience in sports. The Venezuelan baseball team won the World Baseball Classic.
Which is huge.
It was their first world championship since 1945. They defeated heavyweights like Japan and the USA in Miami, playing in front of a massive crowd of 250,000 Venezuelan expatriates.
And we really need to place this victory in the exact timeline provided by the newsletter to understand its weight. On January 3, 2026, the U.S. military launched strikes across Venezuela and captured President Nicolas Maduro in a pre-dawn raid.
Right.
Just 10 weeks after that event, this baseball team is playing a tournament on United States soil.
And to be clear to you, the listener, we are reporting this strictly from the text. We are taking absolutely no sides on the political or military actions involved. We are simply noting the timeline from our source material to emphasize the immense emotional payload these players were carrying.
Absolutely.
They beat a Japanese team loaded with MVPs, then they beat Team USA with a dramatic ninth-inning rally, and after the final out, the team sang their national anthem in tears on the field with thousands of fans weeping in the stands.
We see 3 completely different reactions to pressure across these stories. The affluent parents who tried to bribe their way out of normal competition, a billionaire who lost everything but refused to compromise his integrity, and athletes who channeled the emotional weight of a fractured nation into a world championship.
Yeah.
It shows that the truest measure of a person or a system isn't how it operates when the sun is shining. It's what happens when the dam breaks.
Which brings us to our final theme today, the ultimate long game. Surviving a moment of pressure is one thing, but resilience is also about consistency. It's about how time shapes our efforts and our legacies.
Yes, it's the realization that humanity and our individual lives are part of a much larger continuum.
Take the Oscar story from the newsletter. Diane Warren, the legendary songwriter behind massive hits for Aerosmith and Toni Braxton, suffered her 17th consecutive loss at the Academy Awards.
Ouch.
She literally holds the record for the most nominations without a competitive win.
I mean, most people would be embittered by that.
Exactly. But she embraced the title of Biggest Loser Ever with total grace, joking that at least I'm consistent. She proves that simply showing up, continuing to do the work year after year, is a victory in itself. Time validates the effort.
And we see that same validation of time in the arts. Masami Kurumada, at age 72, just announced a massive new storyline for his legendary manga Saint Seiya 40 years after he first created it.
Or look at Katsushika Hokusai. Back in 1831, He was 70 years old. He had moved 93 times in his life. He had recently lost his wife, and he was completely, utterly broke.
Talk about hitting rock bottom.
And in that exact moment of apparent defeat, he created the Great Wave off Kanagawa, which became one of the most famous and reproduced images in human history.
It is a wonderful counter-narrative to the anxiety of the tech news we started the show with. The AI industry tells us we need to move at the speed of light, right? That if we don't adapt in 5 minutes, we're obsolete.
Yeah, that SaaS is dead, become an agent right now.
Exactly. But human legacy operates in a completely different timeline.
Even our pop culture reflects this desire for grounded resilience. Andy Weir's new movie adaptation, Project Hail Mary, just had a massive $80.6 million opening weekend. The hero of that story isn't a billionaire tech bro or a superhero. He's a junior high science teacher who uses basic intellect, patience, and friendship to save humanity. He just uses the tools he has right in front of him.
Which is a perfect metaphor for how we should approach this overwhelming era of change.
So what does this all mean for you? How do you process all of this? Think about that math puzzle they included in the middle of the newsletter. The prompt is, x plus y equals 1 and x minus y equals 0. What is x times y?
Solve it, you have to look at the second equation. If x minus y is 0, they have to be the exact same number. So 0.5 and 0.5.
Exactly. And 0.5 times 0.5 gives you the answer, 0.25. At first glance, a puzzle like that feels confusing, almost contradictory.
Yeah.
But when you look at how the constraints intersect, a constant hidden truth emerges. It's the same with our timeline. We feel the anxiety of the daily news cycle, the x minus y, the constant subtraction and disruption. But the constant is time and consistency. Hokusai was 70 and broke. Kurumada is 72. Diane Warren has 17 losses.
And if we want to talk about the longest timeline of all to really gain some perspective, look at the space news from this week. Japan's Hayabusa 2 spacecraft analyzed samples from the asteroid Ryugu.
An asteroid that is 4.6 billion years old.
Yes, and they found all 5 DNA nucleobases on that rock. The literal building blocks of life on Earth drifted in the freezing vacuum of space for 4 billion years before they finally collided with our planet and sparked life.
It completely reframes our sense of urgency. We are panicking about AI agents taking over spreadsheets in the next 5 minutes while forgetting we are made of star stuff that waited billions of years to become human.
That's beautifully put.
We are just one part of this massive continuum. If you are ever feeling behind in life, looking at the age of Hokusai or the journey of that asteroid should be the ultimate pressure release valve.
It's a vital reminder. We are capable of incredible innovation, but we are also built for the long haul.
Well, I want to thank you for helping navigate this incredible stack of sources today. It's a reminder that being well-informed isn't just about memorizing the news. It's about seeing how all these disparate pieces, from microchips to dams to asteroids, actually connect.
It's been a pleasure to connect the dots with you.
And I want to leave you, the listener, with one final thought to ponder as you go about your day. If the very building blocks of life were carried across the universe on a rock to seed Earth billions of years ago, think about what we are doing right now with these massive data centers.
Oh, wow.
We are taking the entirety of human knowledge, all of our art, our science, our flaws, and our histories, and we are coding it into these massive silicon AI models. Are we just building the next asteroid of intelligence, preparing to send our own building blocks out into the universe for whatever comes next?
We've gone from looking up at the sky in fear of drones and missiles to realizing we might be the ones building the seeds for the stars.
Exactly. Something to think about the next time you look at the sky.